This is the solution video for section 4.1, problem number 5. All right, so it says for 3 through 5, find the critical numbers of f. Then use the critical number test to determine the absolute extreme values of f. All right, so remember, critical number test, you use the critical numbers. Remember, critical numbers are x values in the domain of f such that f prime is equal to 0 or undefined. All right, so you've got the domain 0 to 27. So your critical numbers starting off are going to be, well, endpoints 0 and 27, of course. Now, we need to find f prime. All right, so now we need to find f prime and determine where it is either 0 or undefined on the interval 0 to 27, so in between 0 and 27. All right, so we're going to find the derivative. So derivative of 2 times x to the 5 thirds. So 2 times derivative of x to the 5 thirds is 5 thirds x to the what? Remember, you subtract 1, so x to the 2 thirds power. All right, then minus 5 times the derivative of x to the 4 thirds. So that would be 4 thirds x to the 1 third. All right. And so now, if I simplify this a little bit, right, I've got f prime of x equals 10 thirds x to the 2 thirds minus 20 thirds x to the 1 third. All right. So now we're going to set this equal to 0. All right. And we want to know when it is equal to 0 or undefined. All right. But this thing is not going to be undefined. All right. But I can talk about that in a moment. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to factor. So I'm going to start off by factoring out 10 thirds. All right. And then I've got an x to the 2 thirds, x to the 1 third. Remember, the strategy is to factor out the lower power. So x to the 1 third. All right. And so then remaining is x to the what? Well, remember, this would be 1 third because when you multiply here, 1 third plus 1 third is 2 thirds. All right. And then minus 2. All right, so now we're setting this equal to 0. So remember, each factor equals 0. So 10 thirds x to the 1 third equals 0, or x to the 1 third minus 2 equals 0. All right, so this thing, right, we're going to divide by 10 thirds. So I get that x to the 1 third equals 0. So now I'm going to cube both sides, so x equals 0. So obviously x equals 0 is an endpoint. So the derivative would have already been, well, not equal to 0 there, it would be undefined technically, but all right. So then next we're going to add 2. So x to the 1 third equals 2. So now I'm going to cube both sides. So x equals 2 cubed, which is 8. All right. So now 8 is another critical number. So I have 0, 8, and 27. All right. And so now the critical number test says plug in the critical numbers into the original function to figure out which one is the least and which one is the greatest. So f of 0, f of 8, and f of 27. All right. So f of 0. So 2 times 0 to the 5 thirds minus 5 times 0 to the 4 thirds. Obviously, this one is easy because 0 to a power is 0. So 0 minus 0 is 0. So we get 0. All right, then f of 8. So 2 times 8 to the 5 thirds minus 5 times 8 to the 4 thirds, all right, equals what? All right, so remember, it could be tempting to use your calculator here, but you don't necessarily need to. You got to remember what this means. So 5 thirds power means the cube root of 8 to the fifth. So I have 2 times, what is the cube root of 8? That's 2, and then 2 to the fifth, right? So 2 to the fifth is 32 times 2 is 64 minus 5 times 8 to the 4 thirds. So once again, cube root of 8 is 2, 2 to the fourth is 16. So 5 times 16. So 5 times 16 is 80. So 64 minus 80 is negative 16. All right, and then lastly, 27. So 2 times 27 to the 5 thirds minus 5 times 27 to the 4 thirds. All right, so 27 to the 5 thirds. All right, so the cube root of 27, all right, is 3. And then 3 to the fifth here, all right, minus 5 times the cube root of 27. So cube root of 27 is 3, 3 to the fourth. All right, so remember, 3 to the fourth, 3 to the fifth. All right, so 3 squared, right? 3 times 3 is 9, times another 3 is 27, times another 3 is 81. So this is 5 times 81. So that's 3 to the fourth. 3 to the fifth would be 81 times another 3. And so this would be 243. So 2 times 243 minus 5 times 81. So 2 times 243 would be, let's see, this is a 2, right? So 486 minus 5 times 81, 5 times 8, right, would be 40. So this is 405. So 405. And so 486 minus 405 is 81. All right, so which of these is the greatest? Well, 81 is the greatest and negative 16 is the least. So negative 16 is the absolute minimum, 81 is the absolute max.